All right, hello class. I hope you are having a good day. As always, you can comment on this post if you have any questions, or feel free to send me an email. So this is a helpful tutorial for your grammar assignments. So we're just going to review subject-verb agreements and go through kind of to make sure that you're set. All right, so let's clarify our terms. You know this, we've practiced this. Subject is the who or what doing the action in a sentence. We've said that since September, should be very familiar to you. So in the sentence, Mrs. Smith taught the class online, Mrs. Smith is the subject. I am the one who is doing the action. Now, what is the action that I'm doing? Remember, verbs are action words. They're the things we're physically doing or we're thinking. So what did Mrs. Smith do? Mrs. Smith taught the class online, taught being our verb. So Mrs. Smith would be our subject, taught would be our verb. But you guys already know that. Now, this is when we're starting to cover some things we recently learned. So if we're talking about whether something is singular or plural, we're just talking about the number or the amount that our person, place, or thing is. So singular means there is one person, place, or thing. Singular means one. You might want to think of it as being single. If you're single, you're one person. If you're in a couple, there's two. All right, so examples of singular is circle, girl, school, park, pen, shoe. The list goes on, but they're all one thing. Now, plural means there's more than one. Let's move my face so you can see the whole thing. So if it's more than one, our examples are going to turn into circles, girls, schools, parks, pens, shoes. All of these are more than one thing. Now, most of them have an S at the end. That's not always the case for plural verbs, but it often is the case. All right. Now, you know how much I love repetition, so let's repeat with me. It might be silly, but just do it with me, okay? So verbs must always match their subjects in number. Verbs must always match their subjects in number. Say it one more time. Verbs must always match their subjects in number. Now that we have that down, let's talk about what that means. So what does that mean? Singular subjects take on singular verbs. They match. So some examples of this is the flag flies on holidays. Flag being our subject, flies being our verb. Both of these are singular and they match. And then the next example is this tree changes colors in fall. Tree being our subject, changes being our verbs. Now you might say, Mrs. Smith, that's confusing because our verbs both have S's at the end. Isn't that the case for plural? Now, when we're talking about verbs, this is where it gets tricky. Most of the time, our verbs, in the case of singular, will end in an S. So you kind of have to reverse it in your mind. So if my subject doesn't have an S at the end, my verb probably will, and vice versa. So plural subjects take on plural verbs. Same idea, just plural. So the flags fly on holidays. Flag still remains our subject, and fly is our verb. Notice now that flies turns into fly. And then our second example, some trees change color in fall. Now our trees are now plural. It's not just one tree, but many trees. And changes turns to change, so then it can match the plural subject to the plural verb. I kind of think of it as evening the scale. So if one item has an S, even it out by having the other one not have it. Now, this takes practice, so don't beat yourself up if you're like, oh, I want to put an S, but there shouldn't be an S. It takes practice. But there's always exceptions to rules, and what about our pesky to be verbs? You love to hate them, but they're always coming back. So to be verbs are always our weird exceptions. So singular to be verbs are is and has, and plural to be verbs are and have. So if we look at this in example, then our to be verbs and numbers have to match as well, but we have to use our specific words. So if we look at the sentence, the turtle is racing, turtle is one, so we match it with is. If there's multiple turtles, turtles gets matched with